Hey Goblin, you've been really practicing those war drums.
I'll bring the generic goblin noise!
This video is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc. with free weekly content and free shipping on orders over $150. You can save 5% site-wide by using the promo code MTGMudsta. I'm also sponsored by Face to Face Games, Canada's premier Magic the Gathering store. Using the promo code MTGMudsta will get you 5% off site-wide, with eligible orders getting free shipping Canada-wide. If you're looking for a direct way to help the channel, please consider joining my Patreon and becoming a member of the Generic Goblin Gang. Today's extra special bonus game is thanks to the holidays, and if you celebrate, Merry Christmas, and if you don't, enjoy an extra game for no other reason than you're being awesome. In today's game, Maximus is playing Marchesa the Black Rose, and I should note his entire deck is unsleeved except for his commander, which has been oddly graded. I should also say it's the only creature he has in his entire deck, and he keeps a Highland Lake, Hall of Storm Giants, Impulse, Grip of Phyresis, Fire Covenant, Deliberate, and Words of Seizing. Mika's got the slithering sly devil that is Kadena, keeping Brainstorm, Shorikai Belder, Felwar Stone, Golgari Signet, Misty Rainforest, Necrotic Hex, and a Swamp. Kevin is playing, and please bear with me as I pronounce this, Ratadrabik of Urborg, and he's keeping an Isolated Chapel, 3 Swamps, Rankle, Master of Pranks, Felwar Stone, and Jet Medallion. He's going to cast a bunch of legendary creatures, and then kill them off to make tokens, and then reanimate them again to have 2 copies. I'm playing Shorikai, which, let's face it, is just vehicles, keeping Dermotaxi, March of Swirling Mists, Suit Up, Prairie Stream, Temple of Enlightenment, Unlicensed Hearse, and Razortide Bridge. Kevin wins the die roll and starts us off. He draws and plays a tapped Isolated Chapel. I also play a tap land with a Razortide Bridge and pass. Maximus follows our example, playing a tapped Highland Lake. Mika draws and breaks from the pact, playing a Misty Rainforest and cracking it and losing 1. He redeems himself in the eyes of the table though by finding a tapped Breeding Pool. Kevin draws and plays a Swamp. 2 mana gets him a Charcoal Diamond and he passes after that. I play Temple of Enlightenment, which comes in tapped, scrying 1, keeping it on top, and then passing. Maximus draws and plays a Mishra's Factory, passing after that. Mika draws and plays a Swamp and casts Felwar Stone. Kevin draws, playing yet another Swamp for turn, and is then able to cast a Defiler of Flesh. He passes after that. I draw and play a Prairie Stream, and then cast an Unlicensed Hearse. I pass, and during my end step, Max casts an Impulse. Mika also decides to get on the action, casting Brainstorm before we move to Max's turn. Max draws and casts a Soul Ring. He then plays a Hall of Storm Giants and passes, and during his end step, I eat both cards in Mika's graveyard with my Hearse. Mika draws and plays a Forest. He casts a Golgari Signet, and then taps the Signet after tapping a mana to cast Shorikai Belder. Kevin draws and plays a Swamp. He plays a Felwar Stone and casts Rankle, giving his Defiler +1/+1 and Menace until the end of turn. Moving to combat, Kevin swings Rankle at me and the Defiler at Max, and we each take the hits. Kevin gets a Rankle trigger, making us all discard a card, and then draw a card and lose a life. He passes after that. I display a Plains and cast an On-Curve Shorikai, passing to Maximus after that. Maximus draws and plays a Cryptic Pursuit. I respond to the spell by tapping the Hearse to exile 2 of Max's cards, which is essentially his graveyard. He then plays an Is It Boilerworks, bouncing the factory back to hand. During his end step, Mika cracks the Elder to find an island. Mika draws and plays Kadena. He then plays a free Morph, drawing as it enters, and passes after that. Kevin's got a Swamp for turn, and then casts his commander, Ratadrabik, giving Rankle the +1/+1 trigger and Menace from the Defiler, and then swings it at Mika and the Defiler at me. We each take our hits, and Kevin chooses all the modes on Rankle, so we each discard a card, then draw a card and lose a life, and then sacrifice a creature. Kevin sacrifices Rankle, which lets him make a copy thanks to Ratadrabik seeing it die. After that, Kevin plays Ellis Ilkor as well as Sivris, Nightmare Speaker, and passes after that. I play Glacial Fortress, and then activate Shorikai to draw 2, discard 1, and make Violet. I then cast SRAM and pass to Maximus. Maximus draws and plays a mountain, missing that critical black mana he so desperately needs. With nothing else, he passes. Mika draws and plays a forest. He plays out his free morph for turn, drawing as it enters, and casts a Scroll of Fate, passing to Kevin after that. Kevin draws and activates Sivris, sacrificing itself and making a copy of the Ratadrabik. He gets a Plains from me, and Max pays 3 life to deny him D-Spark, while Mika lets him get back an Exhume. Kevin then casts Exhume, and I respond by activating my Hearse to exile both creatures in Kevin's graveyard. I get back Muzio, while Mika gets back a Sagu Mauler, and Kevin then goes to combat. He swings the Defiler at me, and Ratabricks at Max, with Rankle taking up the rear and going at Mika. Before blocks, I cast Dispatch and target the Rankle token. Max also activates his Hall of the Storm Giants, which he then uses to block Kevin's commander. Before damage though, Kevin casts a Tragic Slip and targets the Hall, paying the ward 3. We then move to damage, and I take 5, while Max takes 2, and after that, Kevin passes. I draw and play a Port Town, revealing an island from hand, but then have nothing else and have to pass. Maximus draws and plays a Mishra's Factory again. He passes, and during his end step, Mika activates the scroll, manifesting a card from his hand and drawing a card as the face-down card enters and Kadena sees it. Mika draws and plays a Castle Bantress. Moving to combat, he swings a Sagu Mauler at Max, and the Morph and Manifest at Kevin. Neither of them block and take the hit, and he passes after that. Kevin draws and once more activates Sivris, sacrificing Ellis this time, which deals 1 to each of his opponents. For his trigger, I give him the Soldavi Adnate, while Maximus gives him the High Market, and Mika takes 3 to deny Sir Conrad from going to his hand and instead goes to the graveyard. Kevin then plays a High Market for turn and casts Animate Dead. With the spell in the stack, I respond by eating Sir Conrad and another creature with the Hearse. He then plays a Talisman of Hierarchy, and then casts Soldavi Adnate. He passes after that. During his end step, I activate Muzio, putting a Reaver Titan into play. I draw and play a basic. I then cast a Thought Monitor, drawing 2 as it enters. And tap 3 for Katori, Pilot Prodigy. I then use Katori to crew up the Reaver Titan, and move to combat, although I can't give it Katori's buff due to its protection from 3. I then swing the Reaver Titan at Kevin, and deal 5 to everyone from its on-attack trigger. Kevin then takes the hit for 10. Maximus draws but still has no black mana, and has to pass. During his end step, Mika manifests another creature thanks to the Scroll of Fate. Mika draws and plays a Morph card for free, drawing another card. He plays Bajuka Bog, which comes in and exiles Kevin's graveyard. He then goes to combat. He swings the Sagu Mauler and a Morph at me, and I choose to block the Morph with the Thought Monitor. Before damage, Mika flips it face up to reveal a Hooded Hydra, and I then take 6 from the Mauler, and my Thought Monitor dies, and after that, he passes. Kevin draws and plays a Plains. He then activates Sivris, sacrificing the Defiler, and Max and I give him Plains and Takenuma respectively, while Mika pays 3 life to deny an Incarnation technique from going to his hand. Kevin then passes, and during his end step, I once more activate Shorikai. I draw and play Manamo School at Water's Edge. I then crew up the Reaver Titan again and swing in at Mika, dealing 5 to the table. Before moving to blocks, Mika manifests a card with Scroll of Fates, but draws nothing relevant, and then blocks with Kadena. At this point the table is pretty clear about how they feel about the Reaver. At this point the table makes it very clear how they feel about the Reaver Titan, and I apologize to Harry, who typically scripts my games. Harry, I apologize for their naughty words. After that, I pass turn. Max draws and casts Opt in his main phase, manifesting a card off the top of his library from Cryptic Pursuit. He keeps the card on top, and then casts Mizzix's Mastery, and flashes back his Deliberate. He then makes another manifest, and finally digs into an Exotic Orchard, which he plays for turn. With access to black mana now, he passes after that. Mika draws and plays a Reliquary Tower. Going to combat, he swings the Hooded Hydra and Sagu Mauler at me, and I respond by crewing the Unlicensed Hearse and Shorikai. Mika then responds by casting Reality Shift and targets the Hearse, and I counter it with an Arcane Denial. I then block the Hydra with the Hearse and the Mauler with Shorikai. The Hydra gets killed, and Mika gets 5 Snake tokens from the Hydra dying. After that, Mika passes. On Kevin's upkeep, Mika draws 2 and I draw 1 from the delayed trigger from Arcane Denial, and Kevin then draws for turn. He activates Sivirus again, sacrificing the Sildavi Adnate, and this time I give him Nadar, Max gives him a Fetid Heath, and Mika gives him Yeheni. Kevin then plays the Heath for turn, and then casts Nadar, venturing into the Dungeon of the Mad Mage, which has him gaining 1 life. He follows it up with Yeheni, and sacrifices the Nadar to make another copy of it, which comes in and ventures again. Kevin's opponents have also each been losing 1 life every time a creature dies, thanks to Ellis. Once he resolves his venture, Kevin then attempts to reanimate Nadar with Footsteps of Goyuro, and I respond by exiling it and the Defiler of Flesh by tapping my Hearse. Kevin responds by channeling Takenuma, and saves Nadar by bringing it back to his hand. He then replays Nadar, venturing again, and then sacrifices Nadar again, making another token and venturing again. With all of his dungeoneering done, Kevin then passes his turn, and during his end step, I activate Museo and get to keep a Peace Walker Colossus. I then activate Shorikai. I draw and play an island. I crew up the Reaver Titan and the Peace Walker Colossus, and swing the Colossus at Max and the Titan at Mika. Max chumps with a Manifest, and Mika flips up a Felonite Hermit, making a bunch of Saproling tokens and then chumping the Titan with it. In my post-combat main phase, I then play a Knight Paladin, and seeing his inevitable doom, Max casts a Fire Covenant, and he pings the Pilot token and SRAM. This has Max dying from the Knight Paladin Enter the Battlefield trigger, and after that, I pass turn. While Mika activates his scroll to manifest on my end step and draws a card. Mika draws and plays a Forest. Going to combat, he swings his team of Morphs and manifests at me. And before blocks, I crew up the Knight Paladin, and then activate Museo. I get very lucky as Museo flips into a Sculpting Steel, which comes in as a copy of the Knight Paladin. This will deal the final 4 damage needed to the table, and I'm able to take the game in the middle of Mika's combat step, and that's all she wrote. Game review time. So that was pretty spicy, and once more I really enjoy my Shorikai Genesis Engine deck. I got very lucky off that last Museo activation, and basically Sculpting Steel won me the game. I think unfortunately Maximus struggled by not having black mana, and it prevented him from basically casting half of his hand, let alone his commander. I feel like Kevin was definitely the threat early on, and that early Rankle was very troublesome, forcing us to discard cards and sacrifice creatures when we didn't want to. I was also very impressed with the Defiler, as it allowed him to basically use life instead of mana, which helped him to power out cards faster. I think I've spoken about Kadena enough for everyone to know that I love this Morph commander, and Sultai is just a lot of fun. We actually didn't see too much of his sweet tech, just a bunch of Morph creatures, and it felt like for the most part the cards that were face down weren't the answers that he needed at the time. This video wouldn't be possible without the help from my sponsors, Cool Stuff Inc., Multizone, Original Magic Art, and Alter Sleeves. But it definitely wouldn't be possible without the help from you, the viewers, and my patrons. So I just want to say thank you for watching, and to remember, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.